All right, let's open it up. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's Bay Area Greenprint webinar. Come on in. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get started here in just a second. I'm Tom Robinson with Together Bay Area, a, uh, um, a happy and privileged member of the Bay Area Greenprint core team, welcoming you to this webinar on new features in the Bay Area Greenprint on CEQA housing and policy advocacy. Come on in. Welcome. We'll get started here shortly. If you're just joining us, welcome. If you're here to learn about the Bay Area Greenprint and in particular about features related to CEQA housing and policy, you're at the right place. Welcome. We have we're really overjoyed with the number of registrants for this webinar. We're excited to share, and we're excited that you're joining us today. Folks are still filing in, so we'll let that happen. Welcome. And we'll give it just, about 15 more seconds. I can see the participants list kind of cranking up. So welcome. Again, this is a Bay Area Greenprint webinar. I'm Tom Robinson with Together Bay Area, and I'm joined today by my colleagues on the Greenprint core team, Dan Rademacher from GreenInfo Network and Adam Garcia from AMG Sustainable Planning. And we have a couple of invited speakers that we're really excited to have. Ariana Rickard from Sonoma Land Trust and Sadie McGarvey with Integral Consulting. And we're here to share some new tools and resources to help you bring nature into planning early in the process, whether it's in a legislative or advocacy or CEQA or housing project context, with the ultimate aim for growth in the Bay Area that works for nature, agriculture, and our communities. And Dan, let's move on to the agenda. So we're going to spend the next hour together, and we want to make the most of it. We're going to hear from Dan and Ariana about Greenprint's new legislative reports that you can run for your districts, and we'll hear from Adam and Sadie about new resources for CEQA and housing planning. So we have material to share, but we also want to hear from you. So there'll be 2 stops for questions, but feel free to submit your questions in the chat as we go along. Next slide. And I'll do my best to make sure that we field those questions. So again, just strongly encourage to post your questions in chat. Next slide. There we go. Okay, so yes, please post. But let's practice that. Let's practice our chat skills as if we need them. If you would, please head on over to the chat window in Zoom and tell us your name, your organization or affiliation. And then here's the icebreaker question. What's one word that comes to mind when you think of the value of nature in your work? So your name, your affiliation, and what's one word that comes to mind when you think of the value of nature in your work? And I'm seeing, Dan, thanks for offering up the first one. Connection is the word that comes to you. Ariana, thanks for sharing. Life. I'm seeing irreplaceable, resilience, um, integral, inspiration, health, of course, health, rejuvenation, recovery. Oh, these are good. Place, rehabilitation. So this is very health related, very physical and mental and emotional health related. I love it. Opportunity. Thanks for that. Well, fantastic. Keep them coming. Peace, everything. Yes. Climate resilience. Keep them coming. Thanks for sharing. It's so good to have you all with us. We're really excited to share. So, with that, let's go ahead and get started. The Greenprint, I'm going to give just a quick overview of what the Greenprint is. It's a free public mapping and reporting tool that reveals the multiple benefits of nature and agricultural lands, biodiversity, water, carbon storage, recreation, hazard resilience, and more. And it's designed to make sure that nature is part of the conversation from the very start. It's not an afterthought. When we plan for growth, for infrastructure, for housing, and the ultimate goal, why did we, put this thing together? It's to foster growth here in the Bay Area that balances nature, agriculture, and the needs for a growing region. Next slide. Um, we developed the Greenprint with these four objectives. The first, again, is to incorporate conservation early in planning. The second is to provide like a one-stop shop for natural resource data and assessments. We're very fortunate here in the Bay Area to have so much data, but often it's in disparate places. And so this is sort of a one-stop shop. And then the third is to offer a common analysis for opportunities. So coming up with a way of looking at that data through some common and some kind of pre-canned ways, making sense of the data and maybe actually getting to what's significant about my area of interest with respect to these data. And then to just raise awareness about nature and its benefits. Next slide. And it's important to note that the Greenprint wasn't developed in a bubble, not at all. It's actually the result of countless hours of discussion, advice, and testing from a wide range of practitioners and experts from these organizations and institutions here in the Bay Area. Next slide. Okay, so now let's kind of lift the hood a little bit. There's so much information and there's so many lenses through which to look at nature's values and benefits. And so we organized the Greenprint around those values and benefits. Choosing themes such as biodiversity, water quality, food production, outdoor recreation, carbon storage, urban greening, resilience, and so much more. And each one of these values or benefits emerged from the folks and advisors that we spoke with. That these are the things that are connected the most to policy concerns, planning concerns. And so for each one of these values or benefits, it has its own data sets, has its own maps, related policies. And so, for example, you can overlay, say, habitat data with policies to see where protections are strong and where there are gaps. And so this whole approach, the idea is to let planners and advocates and community members kind of see the whole picture, not just isolated issues. And you can, next slide, you can explore all of this at bayareagreenprint.org via interactive maps, through a dashboard. Go ahead and go right through them there, Dan. Dashboard, data downloads, a really neat module called the conservation assessment, where you can actually individually slide some different values and benefits in terms of their opacity, so that you can actually get a visual look at how things stack up. Um, but maybe the star of the show is the multi-benefit reporting through the Greenprint, where you can create an area of interest, or you can choose from a preset list of areas of interest and get custom reporting under all of those different values and benefits for that area of interest. And because you all are discerning folks and you might be taking the information that you learn from the Greenprint or you glean from the Greenprint and go and affect change in your worlds, you're going to need to know the methods and the data sources. And so we have a robust methods and glossary section as well. Um, and so now that we have an understanding of what the Greenprint is all about, I'm going to invite Ariana and Dan to the stage who will, pardon me, walk us through some of the latest legislative updates and 30 by 30 features. So Dan and Ariana.
Thanks, Tom. At GreenInfo Network, we built out this feature with some support from Ariana's work and to support her work. So this is a full Greenprint report for any Assembly, Senate, or congressional district in the Bay Area. And Ariana, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you're using this?
Yeah, so this actually was an idea from Josh Hug, who I see is here on the webinar. So thank you, Josh Hug, for suggesting this, that when we are going into these meetings with legislators, with either state assembly members and state senators or congressional reps, that it's really useful to have this on the ground report specific to their district so they can see what we're talking about and how it will affect the district. So this was the new feature added this year. And so you can get this, you can, and Dan is going to do a demonstration where you can specify the district and then get a specific report. And then you can see how well that district is doing in terms of the 30 by 30 metrics of biodiversity, climate resilience, and outdoor access. So that's really helpful as right now, the Power in Nature Coalition is the statewide coalition that is working with the state and others to advance the 30 by 30 initiative. And so we are currently doing meetings with the state assembly members and state senators and talking about the allocations for Prop 4 from the climate bond from last year that are going to advance 30 by 30. So we can talk about the specifics and how I'm using that information in meetings if we want to do the demonstration first, Dan.
Yeah, so the way this works, and let me just make sure the screen sharing actually flips. You should be seeing a report
Yes, we're
page.
seeing.
Great. So this is the Analyze and Report section of the Bay Area Greenprint. There's a few different ways you can get a report, and today we're going to look at choosing an area. And so what we added here was Assembly, Congressional, and Senate districts. So for this demo, I'm choosing a Senate district, and those load on the map. I can either click them on the map or I can select it from the list, and then I get the report, and then that loads the whatever section of that Senate district overlaps with the Bay Area Greenprint's coverage, which is the 9-county Bay Area. And so we see that in red on the map, and then we have a complete report at the bottom with all the information. When Ariana and I were looking at this space earlier, we can do that multi-benefit assessment that Tom talked about. We can also select different map layers here. So some that's relevant to work that Ariana is doing is threatened and endangered species, and so we can start to look at details within that district and then move down the report and see what's important. So Ariana, what do you want to look at here?
Yeah, so the district that we're looking at right now is Senator Cabaldon's District 3. And so it's his district covers also the Sacramento area. So this is just sort of a selection of his district, but the Bay Area part of the district. And so we are requesting a meeting with his office to talk specifically about those Prop 4 allocations and what's in the state budget. So we know from what the governor proposed, he proposed 173 million for coastal resilience. Then what we can do is we can look at this report and we can scroll down to the risk for sea level rise, and you can see so I think it's
Yeah,
maybe just keep going down.
yeah,
It
yeah.
might be further down, but anyway, so you can say like, look, in your district, this is
Here we
the
go.
percentage of your, yes, there you go. You can see like this is the percentage of your district that's in a flood risk zone. And so this is really helpful for us for when we're saying, okay, but when we want to see in the Prop 4 allocations for the State Coastal Conservancy, we want an increase from 31 million to 62 million. You can see why. This is where in your district this is important to your constituents and to the coastal resilience, and then specifically other requests. And then other thing that's we're doing these meetings now is to talk about CEQA, and as you're probably familiar, and we're going to talk about CEQA a lot. The CEQA reforms were passed with the state budget negotiations, but now there's an effort to do a cleanup bill. And so what the Power and Nature Network is asking for is that habitat is included, that CEQA is still applicable to rare and endangered and threatened species habitat. And so then we can say in these meetings, this is where in your district you have so many acres of wetlands and vernal pools, and how important it is for threatened and endangered species. And if CEQA is not applying to these areas, that means there's less mitigation dollars, and then there's going to be less advancement of 30 by 30 in your district. So it's really great to have this, because if you've done these meetings, you know that legislators want to know about what specifically happened in their district. They want to know what matters to their constituents, and they love looking at maps. So to be able to have all this real data about their specific district is wonderful. And so just wanted to share with you all this really powerful tool, so you can go into these meetings and talk about how these funding decisions, these policy decisions are going to impact the natural lands, waters, your people and your voters. And I think that leaves a stronger impression and makes a more impactful meeting. And I think that's it for us. And I'll turn it back to Tom.
Great. Thank you, Ariana and Dan. Let's see here. I see one question through chat, and I just went ahead and answered that, but it was a great question from Caitlin Cornwall, Sonoma Ecology Center. Are the conservation-related data sets in the Greenprint the same data sets in the Conservation Lands Network? And the answer to that is yes. CLN 2.0 data forms the backbone for the Greenprint biodiversity data. Anybody typing a question for Ariana and Dan? I'll give you just a second to hit enter on that. Otherwise, and then also, Dan and Ariana are not going anywhere. So at the end, for some Q&A, they can answer questions then too. But thank you guys so much. That was great. Josh asks, can Santa Cruz County be added? Some of our delegation has county included in their districts. It's a great question. Josh, Dan, do you want to go ahead and field that?
If we can find funding to do that, it's possible. We haven't had that available since we started. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, we do have that in terms of the partiality, we have that issue at all the edges of the region. This example for Senate District 3 is, it only covers the part of the district that's in the Bay Area. And then we have another question about county supervisors. Yeah, we didn't have ready access to complete district data for county supervisors, and the focus on this was 30 by 30, so it was a little more state oriented. Congressional, it's just probably came along for the ride because it's easy to get, but certainly it's the infrastructure is there that, given a data set and folks who are interested at the county supervisor level, it would be relatively straightforward to add.
And then, Dan, folks who have that a shape for their supervisorial district could
upload it. Good point, Tom. Great point. Yeah, if you have a shape available in a KML or shapefile or GeoJSON, then you can upload it to the application using the file upload tool on the report page.
Yeah, great.
Josh, I'll have to get back to you in terms of costs for adding a new county. That would be sort of conversation among the team.
Yeah, great. And then we have a question from Alex Loomer. Can we produce maps of endangered species habitat in each district to demonstrate what lands are at risk of being destroyed now that they're exempt from CEQA? Yeah.
I mean, yes, let's see, lots of questions coming in. I mean, the closest that we can get within the Greenprint, we don't have individual species layers. The map layer that we have for that is important habitat for threatened and endangered species, and it's sort of this kind of heat map. And this link here would tell us more about how we develop that. but we don't have an overlay of individual endangered species information. But this is a summary of that type of information. And then what Tom was suggesting here, if you have a county supervisory district, you can upload a file and get that based on that. And we don't have to have it in this chosen area. And then in terms of counties, yes, counties were already part of this. So among the other, in addition to the ledge districts we talked about, we have census designated places, tracts, cities, counties, HUC-10 watersheds, and unincorporated county areas as these pre-selected areas that you can report on.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the impromptu
Sure.
demoing there. That's awesome. Okay. And thank you all for those great questions. Next, I'm going to welcome Adam and Sadie to the stage to demonstrate the new housing and CEQA features. Adam and Sadie.
All right, thank you, Tom. Hello, everyone. Adam Garcia from AMG Sustainable Planning, bringing a few innovations to the Greenprint tool. These similar to 30 by 30 and a lot of these other types of kind of new modules that we've been developing over the past years related to hazards or urban greening. This kind of falls into those categories as well, but similar to the Santa Cruz Challenge, kind of at this point, we don't necessarily have the funding to expand them into actual modules for housing and CEQA. So they are available though as spreadsheets. So they can kind of you can use the Greenprint report for a given area if you're looking at a potential development or conservation project, and then have that spreadsheet kind of side by side to be able to identify and make notes about kind of the opportunities and concerns for projects areas. So yeah, let's see, we can probably jump to the next slide. And so just to give you a little preview of the two worksheets without going too in depth, this is kind of the overview for the housing one. So we've got our organized layers, kind of list of map layers on the left there. There's a glossary definition provided, and then some kind of brief explanation of how this layer may be relevant to consider for your housing project. And then the far right would just be a space, for a checkbox to say, yes, this layer is present, and then any notes that you might want to include for the follow-up. And then the next slide, similar for the CEQA worksheet. This one is actually organized by Appendix G in the CEQA checklist. So you can see kind of that first section starts with aesthetics. So as you go to the right, you can see what Greenprint layer is included. What level of relevance is it to CEQA? Some layers are just spot on. Are you in a USGS liquefaction zone, for instance? Or other ones might be a little bit more fringe, where it says this might be suggestive of a natural value, but more research is needed. If there are any federal, state, or external layers that are needed for reference, we've included those that would most likely be familiar to a lot of CEQA practitioners. And then just kind of started a column. It's not well completed, but any applicable policies that might impact that particular decision or that particular topic. And then the same, having an area where you can say, yes, little checkbox, is this relevant? Does it require any follow-up? Are there any notes that we should be taking? So kind of giving you, essentially for both of these projects, just as Tom was mentioning also, you really want to use this when you're first starting your kind of project concepts or design. What's in here? What should I be avoiding? Is this the right place to build? If I do build here, or if I am trying to protect this area, what are the kind of multi-benefits, or what are the environmental threats? There's a lot of data in the Greenprint, obviously, to kind of interpret and try to find out exactly where what issues are relevant for your project. Next slide. Okay, so just to give a little overview, so as I mentioned, really important to do this early on. For CEQA, it can identify multi-benefit values of a site, but also identify issues early on in that process. Either maybe that's too high risk of an area to build in. CEQA might restrict some type of building in certain areas, or just topics that say, oh, that's interesting. I need to dive a little bit more deeper and may need to hire a consultant, for instance, to explore that that particular chapter or that section of CEQA. Next slide. Okay, and so now we'll pass it off to Sadie.
Hello, Sadie McGarvey here. I'm a biologist with Integral Consulting, and I'm going to chat with y'all about our project, Marincello. We chose a project site to run through our example that will definitely not become a project site. We wanted to make sure it was very clear what we were evaluating is not for reals. And so Adam had the great idea of choosing Marincello. So I'll give you just a very brief history of this site and then we'll get going. So this site is really big, and back in the 60s there was a proposal that was actually approved by Marin County to develop over 2,000 acres of the Marin headlands. You can see the mock-ups of what they wanted to do, and as you might not be surprised to hear, there was immediate pushback from the community. They relied on a lot of zoning type ordinances to like push their pushback through the courts, and the project eventually ended up dying in the courts in 1970. They were basically told, you're going to have to redo everything with these new considerations in mind, and that led to the Nature Conservancy being able to purchase the land in 1972 to become part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. So this is our site. What we attempted to do was recreate that general project area and say, what would it look like to develop this site today? How would that look? And so I'd like to introduce you to Adam, my client, who is a forward planner with Unnamed Residential Development Company, and he needs a site assessment for this specific site. He wants to purchase this site, and we're going to go through what that looks like. So there we go. So what does it look like to do the an evaluation on this site? So I've taken some screen grabs from Greenprint and then also the CEQA checklist to talk about how one could look through the different options on the Greenprint and take a peek at what might be occurring on their site, what impacts a project at that location might have. And so for the sake of this project, I will be talking about how I would use these tools as a biologist to assess the project. So one could use the tool for lots of different components of CEQA, but as a biologist who works on the biology section, I'll be going through the biological resources component in more detail. And I'm going to endeavor to hit all of the checklist items. So for folks who are familiar with CEQA, this will make more sense. For folks who are less familiar, I think my hope would be to talk through my process so that you can see what's available to you when you're looking at sites. Not necessarily only for development, certainly for preservation, but the CEQA conversation will be regarding what kind of impacts a development project might have. So I have pulled up, so for checklist item A, generally surrounds impacts to special status species. There's multiple ways to get at the potential for impacts to special status species. One of them is in these map layers. There's various different toggles you can hit. You can, you know, make them more opaque or less opaque to see what is going on there. But so one of them is, like we had talked about, the special status species or species that we have in there. If well, you can't scroll down because this isn't the website. On the website, you can scroll down and see special or threatened and endangered species habitat. I chose to click over to the species requiring compensatory mitigation as one. I think what I'm doing here is looking at some of these layers as proxies for other publicly available information. And so this toggle, I can see that it says that there's a hotspot, and then there's some species and few species across this really big site. And so this would be something that I would say, there's a potential for special status species here that would require purchase of mitigation. I wonder what those could be. If you pop over to the next slide, this is actually, you can see on there the mitigation wizard title at the top of that graphic. Thank you. And that is a different component that you can click through. You upload your site as well, and then it gives you, based on, you can choose how far out, but some of the publicly available database information for species occurrences. It will tell you how much, hey, I think you might need X amount of acres of mitigation for this. And so when folks were asking earlier on about like species specific shape files in here, although there's not species specific shape files for habitat or locations associated with this, there are associations with the species and the type of habitats that have been, or land cover types that have been recorded on site. And so I can buzz through and see which types of species could be occurring on my site. And you know, when you see that there's multiple special status species on your site, is probably a good time to get a consultant involved. So those are the tools that I would use for a preliminary look at what types of special status species could be impacted by a project at this site. If you go to the next slide, we'll go to checklist item B, which is sensitive natural communities. So that includes riparian habitat, but it also includes wetlands, valley oak woodlands, native grassland habitats. There's so many of them. And so this tool, there's no tool on here for all of the sensitive natural communities. That's a lot more vigorous process to evaluate if you have a habitat on site that would meet that definition. But this does give you a good initial look. So you can see on this one that it does say that there's 87 acres of oaks. Well, that could be a good indication that I might have some protected oak woodlands on site that would need to be considered, potentially avoided, potentially mitigated for. Same with riparian, wetland, lakes, rivers, ponds, etc. If you flip to the next slide, though, you can see that the tools or the toggles or the layers answer a very specific question. And so, for example, you can see on this key riparian corridors layer, when I first clicked on it, I was like, what? There's no riparian corridors, but then there's a little info button, and key riparian corridors is something very specific. It's not just that there's no riparian corridors, or even that there's no important riparian corridors. It's that there's no riparian corridors that have been pre-identified as key for a variety of reasons. And so if you look at the water quality layer on the left side, you can see that's indicative. Those match up pretty well with where you would assume a riparian corridor is, but that doesn't show up in this other one. And so there's a bunch of different layers that I would mess around with to see what could be occurring on this site. And just one layer is not going to answer all the questions. If you go to the next slide, this is one, regulated waters. So this one shows where I would click on wetlands. There's another one, vernal pools, key riparian corridors, water quality. All of those are ones that I would click through to see, are there wetlands? Can I assume that there are wetlands on the site? This site's so big, I kind of would just assume anyway that there would be some sort of regulated waters on site. But it's a good chance to take a peek at what we're assuming is on site. And you can, I think the next one also has, yeah, again, this is that water quality layer. So there's different layers and analyses for me to look at. Could there be waters on site that I need to consider, that I need to either avoid or plan to mitigate for? The next checklist item is D, wildlife corridors and nurseries. So these are areas, the wildlife corridor is an area that is particularly important to connect to habitats for any number of wildlife species. A riparian corridor is a great example of that, but there's all sorts of, big contiguous blocks of grassland might be an important corridor, those kinds of things. And then nurseries are areas where they would support an increased number of protected areas for nesting or for burrows for, burrowing owls. I guess that's still nesting. Anywhere where there'd be dens, anywhere where there'd be a better chance for more babies and more grown-ups to come out of that area because it's protected, especially in comparison to adjacent lands. And so what I would click on is this habitat connectivity item to see, are there areas where they've already been identified as important connectivity? And I pulled in this little blurb at the bottom. All of these maps, if you scroll down on the page, there's a whole write-up on all of them. And this is one example where it will tell you how many acres and what type of, why it was defined as an important habitat connectivity area. And that helps kind of assess what type, it has here channelized or diffuse. It also has, if it's been identified by a specific organization as an area of importance. And all of those are something important to consider when determining how one might impact a site. If you go to the next slide, this one, for the life of me, I have a really hard time making sure I get all the local policies addressed in checklist item E. I'm always anxious that I've missed something. And this is a really awesome tool to click through to see, it has these hillside policies, riparian, watershed. There's all sorts of things that need to be considered for various different jurisdictions. And it feels nerve-wracking as someone who's always afraid of missing something or getting in trouble. I'm always afraid that I'm missing out on one of these. And so, these are super helpful. If you click on the I on the info link, not here, you can, thank you. We're going to pretend to click on that one. It shows what that policy actually is. So in this green blurb on the bottom, that shows whose policy that polygon is referencing and why it matters and how to plan around it. And I think we have one last one, and that's this HCP and NCCP. This is, we have to evaluate, is this project in conflict with any of these conservation plans? And we've got this conservation plan density toggle. It will tell us if we're in a conservation plan area, if there's a bunch in our area, and then also we click on the I and get more information on that. And so all of these are tools that I would use to evaluate a project for the initial evaluation. There's another, you pop to the next slide, there's a bit more information that if you just click on anywhere on your site, wherever it overlaps with some of these shape files, it'll show you that information. One thing that is super helpful, it shows you these policies, so you can just click on a site and get, some of this basic information that is super nice to start with. Even just pre-identifying the watershed, sometimes that can be, for me, a little tricky. And so I really appreciate these different ways to kind of hone in on where you need to go. Another thing that I don't deal with, but this native territory section, it's another way to be able to notice the different components of CEQA evaluations that that I don't have to deal with, but that I don't work on, but that other folks would, it would be valuable information to get them started on those areas. And so that's how I would use this for doing the bioresource section. I just want to throw in a quick plug on what an awesome resource this is, because when I'm doing my intense evaluation for bioresources, I have to hit up a lot of different publicly available or not publicly available data sources to be able to come to some of these same conclusions. And I love that this is all in one place, but also I just am gonna put in a plug for always wanting to support democratizing science. There's so many times that a client will come to me with a very like simple question that I'm like, hey, did you know you could download this? I mean, it generally ends up being download this shapefile that you can open in Google Earth or go to this. But at this point, I can recommend going to Greenprint for, do you want to see if maybe your site has more wetlands on it than you want to deal with? And or, you know, take a look at some site that might have less special status species that you won't have as big of an impact on. And so it really is going to help, like early planning like is one of the goals, but also I think better planning in terms of like, you know, when you can get started thinking through what your impacts are going to be early on, you can do a better job of avoiding and you can do a better job mitigating, you know, even if it's a matter of like not needing to cobble mitigation credits from 4 different places, you have time to do something bigger and more important that would actually preserve the land and the species in a more meaningful way. So this is how I would use the site to do an evaluation and to better support a client in, my client, Adam, in assessing what those impacts might be.
All right, great. Thank you, Sadie. And so I think we're ready for our next slide. I was a silent developer, sorry in that. I was overwhelmed by how many impacts there were. But yeah, to Sadie's point, yeah, there's a lot of other CEQA considerations in there. Hopefully you can take a look at that spreadsheet to be able to explore some of those a little bit more. So moving on to housing. So when we think about housing, generally that somewhat differs, especially the kind of housing that we like, the infill housing. Doesn't, you know, often think about like, well, if this is the Greenprint tool, is it just about green fields? No, it has a lot of neighborhood level data related to equity and urban greening, hazard data that can, and as well as demographics that can be essential for just understanding the local issues around your project, around your housing project site. Try to get ahead of some of those concerns and opportunities, but then also understand the basic demographics and open space planning policies of a community. So let's see, next slide. And so we're going to do a little role reversal where Sadie will be the developer and I will be the Greenprint expert. So yeah, maybe I'll pass it off to you, Sadie.
Yeah, well, so you had shared that the Greenprint can be used for more than just evaluating impacts or resources on greenfields. So can you talk a little bit more about what that would look like to be able to evaluate that? If I know I want to develop somewhere, but I don't have a specific site in mind.
Yeah, so let's see. One of the ways that you can look at it might be with that the assessment layer, which kind of is the multi-benefit layer. Essentially, those dark green areas are where we know the most natural benefits exist. The lighter areas then are often those city-centered areas where you'll find fewer impacts that can maybe benefit your project's completion more with less hurdles to jump through. So.
Okay. So then I have recently heard of the Marin Sonoma Coordinated Transit Service Plan that is trying to improve public transit through the SMART corridor from Windsor to Larkspur. And I'm wondering if there are some opportunities in that area.
Yes, there are. So let's see, how does this how does the mascots effort affect where you're considering your housing project?
There are 2 locations that I'm considering. They're near the SMART stations in Marin County because we're sticking with Marin County. We are Marin County developers. And based on the regional housing needs assessment, and what it looks like is going to be increasing the service to San Francisco and Richmond out of that area. I think like the area in the San Rafael Transit Station is a good idea. And then
And
I'm
did you have
also
another
looking
site?
at Larkspur, the smart station there, because there's lots of parking lots there, and I think that they could be repurposed to higher use like housing.
Yeah, both of those locations sound great, especially with Marin's jobs housing imbalance. We definitely need more housing in Marin to be able to match the job rich area. Um, so do you had some sites in mind, it looks like?
I think there's a bunch of different ones, and I'm hoping to narrow down.
All right. Well, great. So let's use the green print to find out a little bit more about your two areas. We're really going to take a look at the neighborhoods at this scale. There's a minimum acreage evaluation of for the green print report that's I think about 5 acres. So a lot of those smaller parcels obviously are less than 5 acres, but nevertheless, that's kind of a good starting point to understand what relevant layers are in the green print related to equity, climate, and urban green to start. So maybe we can examine the community priorities first. So taking a look at the San Rafael station, there's two important layers in urban greening. There's park need and priority landscapes for tree planting, which really takes account impervious layers, urban heat island effect, a variety of other measures to be able to come to this kind of heat map. And so we can see there's scattered high priority areas for tree planting across the study area. But really for the park need is more focused in kind of that northeast corner of the study area. And then jumping down to Larkspur, there's a similar distribution of kind of opportunities for tree planting, given your mention of all those parking lots in the area. But park needs actually looks like it's more identified on the opposite side of the freeway. So not sure if our station area can really address a crossing there or not. But yeah, the park need looks to be a little bit further from the site, just given the freeway block.
That's good to know. Can you tell me a little bit about the environmental concerns for the sites and what I should keep an eye out for?
Absolutely. So, um, so the San Rafael station, looking at urban heat island effects specifically, and then sea level rise at 4 feet, we see San Rafael's facing some challenges, particularly the susceptibility to sea level rise. That's that kind of dark green area uh, creeping across the landscape, but also in that downtown area, given a lot of the parking lots and buildings, there is also a very high need for addressing the urban heat island effect. Down in Larkspur, the Larkspur Landing Circle shows also similar high levels of the urban heat island effect, but sea level rise doesn't appear to affect the station specifically, but definitely might have some impacts along the nearby Sir Francis Drake Boulevard.
Okay, so these are both infill sites, which is good. That fits in with my grand plan of doing infill only and saving the world that way. I'm wondering if you have any way to use this tool as to help identify policies that could help with funding or moving things along more quickly because it's an infill project.
Absolutely. We've we went through a process to build out an equity module. And given the limited funding we had, we met with folks and prioritized two different layers, the California climate priority populations, which does provide some funding for affordable housing as well as other climate mitigation projects. And then also the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee opportunity areas. So just looking at the California climate priority populations, we see the San Rafael Transit Center is identified as a low income community under that designation. Jumping down to Larkspur, it looks like the station is actually right in between two identified California priority populations. So depending on your application, you might want to mention that you're maybe connecting transit between those two priority populations.
That's really good. So this is a lot. What is a way that would be easier to compare this information than just keeping it in my brain?
Well, great question. We have this awesome share and compare tool. So when you scroll down to the bottom of after you've generated a report, you'll see a kind of a button bar with different ways to download your data as well as share your report through a little bit.ly link. So going to share and compare, you can grab your two bit.ly links from the two projects and then add them to the compare reports box. So you see we have one for San Rafael Transit Center, one for the Larkspur Smart. And then when we click on compare, we get this great map as well as a number of charts down below. So we can see our two sites very proximate to each other. The San Rafael in red, Larkspur is in the blue circle. And so as we go down, we compare the Greenprint layers, we can see comparisons by total area, such as acres, but then also the percent that layer falls within your study area. So what, for instance, what percent of your area is within a flood zone? Going down further to the overview chart, we see that there are San Rafael's in the, sorry, if you can maybe just go back one slide. Thanks. So there are, in this case, the red and blue arrows indicate which project has the greater value. So the red arrow would be pointing to San Rafael. That says it's got one priority conservation area and one priority development area, while the Larkspur Smart has 0. So, but alternatively, there are 6 acres of parkland in that smart circle the Larkspur circle we drew, but less than 1 acre for the San Rafael Transit Center.
That's super helpful. Can you tell me, Adam, would this still make as much sense if the two sites weren't the same size?
It's helpful to have them similar size, but at the same time, if you have variable funding and you might be able to have a larger project in one area for more space, but then maybe there's a concentrated area that has more values in it, you can use those different sizes to compare as well.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. So let's see, we're going to maybe race through these to just get some questions. We've got our communities, urban greening, to kind of compare, looking at urban heat island effects, priority landscapes, displacement typologies. That communities of concern, I think we need to update that as MTC's equity priority areas as it's currently defined. The disadvantaged communities is from the state. And let's see, next slide. And then the last one, just to wrap up, would be hazards, just identifying Larkspur is kind of closer to those hillside landslide areas, whereas San Rafael has more issues related to liquefaction, though Larkspur does as well. So gives you a sense of where those different values are and maybe where there might be more mitigation compared to another spot to make that project viable.
That's great. So all those things considered, do you have a recommendation of one side over the other?
Yeah, I would say San Rafael, even though it is facing sea level rise risk, it has both the funding opportunities from PDAs as well as from the priority populations, as well as that improved connection to the East Bay and to San Francisco. That's going to be the main hub to really get you all across the bay in a quick way via the bus or back up north along the SMART train.
Great, I'll do it. I'll purchase it. Thank you.
Sadie and Adam, excellent role playing, very believable performances. Kudos, round of applause. And also Sadie, thank you. A few roles earlier. You mentioned the Greenprint's role in kind of democratizing data and science, and that kind of collectively makes our collective Greenprint hearts swell. That really is the impetus for doing this, is democratizing the data and science and making it easier for folks to to incorporate nature's values and benefits in just these kinds of case studies that you guys so creatively brought to life for us. So thank you so much. And we've got time for questions, and we've got a couple. The first up is, what definition do you use for disadvantaged community? Is it the Cal Enviro screen? Josh, thanks for that question.
Sorry, yes, it is. I just put a link with some misspellings, sorry, to the glossary item for that. So you get the backup, but yes, it's the Cal Enviro screen definition.
Great. And another just a recommendation for from Josh for housing, low-income communities should be included.
And good news on that, Josh, if you run a report, it's not a specific map layer that I believe, but if you do run a report on an area and go to the equity tab, down at the bottom is a demographics section where we do have low income household information based from the census. There's race information as well. So nothing too in depth, but just kind of a light touch to understand the community demographics.
Wonderful. Thanks, Adam, for that. Josh, thank you for that. Any other questions from our participants today? Or Sadie and Adam, or Ariana and Dan? Kaylin, thank you so much for that vote of confidence there, that shot in the arm coming from you. That means a lot. And likewise to Josh, appreciate that. Okay, looks like there are some thanks coming in. I want to extend our thanks on behalf of the Bay Area Greenprint core team to to Ariana and Sadie for joining us today to get the word out about these new features. Ariana and Sadie, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. It was wonderful to hear your voices and your perspectives. And so thank you, folks. We want your feedback. Please email us at info@bayareagreenprint.org. Your advice, suggestions, comments are welcome there. Please go to bayareagreenprint.org, use the Greenprint, sign up for our newsletter to keep up to date. And with that, just want to thank everybody for joining us today, and also extend our appreciation to the funders of the Bay Area Greenprint, the Bechtel Foundation, MTC, and the Natural Capital Project. Thanks everybody for joining us today.